Our guest today is a United States Senator from the state of Indiana. He is a member of the Democratic Party. Prior to being elected to the Senate 2 years ago, our guest today served as congressman for 6 years. He serves on the Armed Services Committee, the Agricultural Committee, and the Committee on Aging. Our guest today earned his bachelor's and law degrees at the University of Notre Dame. He and his wife, Jill, are the proud parents of 2 children, Molly and Joe Jr. Ladies and gentlemen, Senator Joe Donnelly. Senator. All right, have fun up here.
Oh, mine, huh? Thank you very, very much for having me here with you. I happen to be Catholic, and my favorite priests are the ones who don't go for more than 7 minutes in their sermon. So I'll do everything I can here. And I just, as a point of personal privilege, I want to let you know and introduce you to a gentleman who was already mentioned, Dan Formeller. Dan is the partner I worked for when I first came out of law school here in Chicago with Tressler LLP, is a very, very close friend. Said a lot of the things we should be doing in how to conduct yourself and how to manage yourself. So anything that went wrong is Dan's fault. It is great to be here. To the folks who are here with Mark Kirk and Senator Durbin, it's an honor to serve with those 2 senators. They represent Illinois very, very well. And to my friends from Indiana, our office holders, State Representative Reardon, our city council members, and Mayor Freeman Wilson. The mayor is considered my sister. We are brothers and sisters, and we are working on a project at the airport together. And we had all the railroads come in, and they all sat around and they said, "Well, what kind of relationship do you have with the mayor?" I said, "She's my sister." And they looked and said, "Okay, we're good." And you know what? The railroads did what the mayor wanted them to do, so it all worked out great. I was going to start with just an agenda about opportunity and job creation, because that's what we're trying to focus on in Indiana and as a country. But I thought it was disingenuous not to mention first the challenges we have overseas. With what's going on in Iraq, this group ISIS is an offshoot of Al-Qaeda that was booted out of Al-Qaeda because they're so extreme. They put some videos together yesterday, we don't know the veracity of all of them, where it appears that they summarily executed a number of the Iraqi army and basically threw them in ditches. This is one of the most challenging situations we could find. It is, in some ways, a Sunni-Shia civil war. It is a proxy war between Saudi Arabia and Iran. It is a situation where Iran has reached out to us to be their partners in trying to help the Iraqi government. So it tells you how incredibly challenging and convoluted this is. At the same time, in Syria, Bashar Assad is almost viewed as the only thing stopping ISIS from taking over Syria. So the person that everybody's been trying to take down for the last couple of years is now viewed by some as the last person left to keep the country from going into utter chaos. It's very, very dangerous. We are having some of our embassy folks come home at this present time. We are securing all of our consulates. A number of the folks who are there as contractors, their entire Air Force flies at the ability of our contractors to keep the planes up in the air. And so the day our contractors come home, those planes stop flying. And the danger that's going on right now, they picked up another town last night, ISIS did. And so they have also used as their recruiting tool pictures of the Twin Towers falling, and have said publicly yesterday that they're very, very hopeful the U.S. gets into the fight, because what they really want to do is go after our men and women. This is a very, very dangerous situation. You combine it with Ukraine and Boko Haram in Nigeria, and we face some of the biggest foreign policy challenges we've seen in a long time. Which brings me back to what I wanted to mention, which is the more we're self-reliant, the more ability we have to manage our own affairs and not worry about other countries in terms of them providing us with products, not worry about them helping us out economically, the better off we'll be. And so I have been all in on American energy independence. I think it's critical. I think that when we throw everything we have ethanol, biodiesel, wind, solar, coal, nuclear, across the board, and it comes from America. This year, we became the world's #1 producer of natural gas. In 2020, we have the ability to become the world's leading producer of oil. Think of that. I'm old enough to remember the late 70s when you had license plates. And on Mondays, you could use one with an even number. And on Tuesdays, one with an odd number. And we're in a position now where we can be completely energy independent as a country. And at the same time, have natural gas reserves that can help our friends in places like Ukraine become independent and strengthen their economy. And so the more we do for ourselves at home, the better off we are. In Indiana, we have had an extraordinary growth in manufacturing jobs. One of our biggest challenges is having the skills necessary to continue that. And so we have a full-bore program across the state with our community colleges. State Representative Reardon has worked on a number of these issues in terms of funding and financing, where we are working to be able to have everybody get some type of education after high school. We have jobs going wanting there, I'm sure you do here, as well, in some of the most skilled trades. And so part of what we're trying to do, our unemployment rate went down below 6% for the first time in a long, long time last month. I was congressman during a time in 2008, 2009, and I know you felt those same challenges here. We're in my northernmost district, Elkhart, we built RVs. Unemployment went over 20%. And in our southernmost county in the congressional district, Howard County, we built Chrysler transmissions. And we had over 5,000 people working there. And then we had less than 50. So we had an entire town, 4,950 who were laid off, and almost every single one of them in a town of about 40,000 had a little bungalow and had a challenge of, how am I going to pay a mortgage on this? And everyone in the town at the same time had the same challenge. Well, where we're at now is, because of the resurgence of the auto industry, I am not ashamed to say I basically got on my knees and begged the president to help Chrysler. In fact, your easygoing mayor was my partner in that effort. Which I'll tell you, I told a little quick story here about how it was when the Colts were in the Super Bowl. I don't think it was against the Bears, I think it was against the Saints that year. We had a budget vote. And I voted no. And the mayor, who was then in Congress, was not very, he's the chief of staff at the time, was not very fond of my vote. But he still came to the members' gym every single day. And so he is also not one to let bygones be bygones, I guess. Maybe that's the way to put it. So I'm sitting on the floor of the House, and a couple of the other members from Indiana come up and go, how awesome is this? We're all going to the White House for the Super Bowl. And I'm like, yeah, that's going to be awesome. So I asked my chief of staff, I said, when's the big party? He goes, you're not invited to any party. And I said, well, what do you mean? They said, every member is invited. And they said, well, I'll check it out. He came back in the office and he said, well, almost every member is invited to the Super Bowl. And so every single member of the Indiana congressional delegation, including Mark's boss, Congressman Visclosky, was invited to the White House for the Super Bowl, except for the congressman from South Bend. And so I saw him at the gym the next morning. And I said, hey, what happened to my invite? And he looks, he goes, what happened to my budget vote? So it got a little testy. And the best part is, you know, we said some things I won't mention here. But like 3 weeks after the Super Bowl, I'm in the gym, he comes up, he goes, buddy, I need your help on a vote. And I'm just like, you know. He has a very short-term memory sometimes. But he's a dear friend, and I wish him the very, very best as mayor here. But the things we can do, the skills, the opportunity to go all in on American energy, the opportunity to do infrastructure. We're desperate for infrastructure in Indiana. Desperate. Like I was mentioning, the mayor and I, what we're working on is, and the mayor's doing all the work, is the Gary Airport, making it so it's an incredible resource for Chicago as well. It's a huge infrastructure project. And the more we do in this area, the stronger our country is going to be. We can't let this go and make our kids pay for trying to rebuild everything that fell apart. We're trying to get a highway bill done. It's been the easiest thing in the world over years and years and years. We can't get an agreement on funding right now to build highways. The interstate system that our parents and grandparents built for us, we have an obligation to maintain. And so the best thing we can do is work together. We've had a great relationship with the Illinois delegation on Lake Michigan issues. We've worked very, very closely on the Asian carp issues together. We have worked on the renewable fuel standards together, on the Veterans Center here. All of our Northwest Indiana vets, when they go to a vet's hospital, it's usually up here. And so we work together very closely on these things. And that's how we're going to move ahead as a country, is to leave the fighting aside and to come together to do what's right for America. When the shutdown occurred, I was one of the 14 that helped to end it. And Mark was there with us, Mark Kirk. And our whole purpose was, how do we use common sense? How do we do the kind of things they do in Chicago and South Bend and Gary and Naperville, that common sense be put into Washington? And people fought and fought and fought, and Senator Durbin helped us as well. People fought and fought and fought. And we said, look, nobody's going to get 100% of what you want, but you can get maybe 70%, and you can get 70%, and overall, the nation grows and gets stronger. And so we were able to put that together. On the health care, I'm the co-sponsor of a 40 hours is full-time bill, because the Health Care Act's not perfect. But you know what? For the first time in history, somebody with diabetes can get coverage. A mom who has cancer can get coverage. And so those are the good things. And then my feeling is, let's fix the things that are causing problems. If we do that as a nation, we can really come together. I'm incredibly hopeful. Budget-wise, we're at the lowest percentage of GDP as a deficit right now in years, but we've got to get it to zero, because our kids shouldn't be paying our bills. In the healthcare area, as some of you may know, the technology is stunning that's going on right now. We think cystic fibrosis, that we can end that within 5 years. Today, the headline in the New York Times was, in the diabetes area, from the National Institute of Health, we've been working on this, that with an iPhone on your side, that there's a packet on the other side that continually monitors your insulin level. Continually, every 5 minutes, it calls the iPhone. And the iPhone then calls back and gives an exact meterage, so that you don't have to worry during the night whether your numbers are getting lower or whether there's a chance you might go into a diabetic coma. And this has all been put together with the NIH has been funding, and it's in issue after issue after issue like that in healthcare that the world is going to change. My son has diabetes, and this was breathtaking news to me, to him. And they said, all you have to do is hook this up to an iPhone, and it will continually monitor your numbers and put out the insulin. And then I had one question. I said, what happens when your son forgets to charge his iPhone and everything goes south on you? And they laughed and they said, we're trying to extend battery life as well. So, but it's a great honor to be back here with you. As I said, Dan and I worked together for many years. I think the first case he gave me was a case where there was an accident at one of our employers, and it was a fella backing up, and there were two people in the car, and when the lawsuit came in, there were 4 people suing. And Dan said to me, he goes, if you lose this case, you won't be employed any longer. So, but this has been like a second home to my wife and I. Chicago is a very important part of our life. But here's the thing, together, Illinois, Indiana, the whole Midwest brings a lot of common sense, and our nation needs it now. We face challenges like we've never seen, and I'll finish up with this very, very quickly. I went to Ukraine. Afghanistan and Israel about a month and a half ago. And in Israel, we went to see the Palestinians and the Israeli leadership. And both of them said, look, we complained publicly about you guys. It's kind of what we do. But we also know you're the only people who can help us solve this problem, meaning the Americans. And we went to Afghanistan, and we were with their parliamentarians, a big group of them, about 15. And they said, you're the first people who ever came here who didn't try to take over the country, who came here to try to help us. And you're the first people who have ever given us a chance to actually have a decent life. And in Ukraine, we met with the prime minister. And this is before the Russians folks invaded the eastern part. We met with the prime minister, and he said, look, there are other countries who are talking about helping us and that they want to do this and they want to do that. We know you're the only ones we can rely on. And we also know you're the only country that the other countries who have bad will toward us will respect and will watch. And so we need you there with us. And that every other country in the world feels the same way. That's who we are. That's what you provide by going to work every day, strengthening our economy, strengthening our nation, as you give us the opportunity to try to build a better world. So I'm very, very grateful for it. I'm very grateful to all the Hoosiers who are here today, or part-time Hoosiers, I should say. They have one thing in common. Before they come back to Chicago on a Sunday night, they all fill up their gas tanks in Indiana. This is what they do. And they're going, oh, I go to the Verk station. I go to this station. I go to that station. But it's a great partnership. I'm very, very honored to be here. And I want to thank you, Jay, and the club, and all of you for this very, very kind invitation. Thank you very much.
If you have a question, we have a brief time for a question. Boy, you're right, Jay. It's tough to see up here. I take it back. Is this U.S. Attorney here? All right, enough of that. By the way, Senator, you don't might not know this, but this is a little touchy subject, but your governor has been doing an awful lot of poaching.
I'm aware of that.
And what we're saying right now, since you're here, we're going to poach you. We want 3 senators from Illinois. And we'll give him 4,000 jobs and a draft choice. Okay. I know Tom Murphy, too. All right, here we go. We'll do a question on what you said and a question on what you didn't say. Peter Scosi, MPC. You mentioned infrastructure and Peter, what?
Highway bill.
Sure. Highway bill. What hope do we have for a long-term solution?
Right, we want to get a 5-year highway bill done. There are folks who don't even believe that the government should be funding a highway bill, which is extraordinary since, as we said, it's very much almost like, and I know there's a better technical term, but it's like mooching off of previous generations, that we're not willing to step up and do our portion of it. And so there's a gap in the highway funding, and we need to fill it. And there's been no agreement on how to do it. So, I've been supportive of about 4 or 5 different solutions. And it really comes down to whether you believe the government has a role. Look at the interstate highway. It changed our country, absolutely changed our country. And we have to reinvest in making sure that it stays up to date. Public-private partnerships are fine, but we're in a position right now in Indiana where on our toll road, that the financing hasn't met expectations, and as a result, we face challenges like you go into the toll plazas and the bathrooms are less than customer friendly, so to speak. And these are the kind of things that, as we look as a state, our roads have been in very, very difficult situations. In Northwest Indiana, Klein Avenue, it's been down for 5 years. 5 years. That road hasn't been rebuilt. They took a section out, it's a bridge, $133 million to fix it. They wouldn't spend the money. It's a tragedy. Klein Avenue during the winter, the part that was working became so bad due to potholes that they had to close it down because there were cars littered across the highway from flat tires. This year, myself personally driving around, I blew 2 tires, and I haven't had a flat in 10 years before this. The need gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and it's one of those things where if we don't deal with it right now, it's going to hit us in the head. And so we have some alternate opportunities. On the Senate side, I think we're going to be able to get a highway trust fund bill passed, and hopefully that will be used as a model for the House. I know Congressman Visklosky has worked really hard on getting a highway fund done. He's on appropriations. It's critical to him and to our state. And so there's plenty of votes in the House to pass it right now. Plenty of votes. You just have to bring it to the floor. But there's a group who is blocking it. If that gets to the floor, you get 250 votes like that. And that's what, when we're talking about we need to put the politics aside, that's what I'm talking about, is that we can get votes on this stuff. That's 250 immediately. That's an overwhelming number. But in the caucus, you can't get it out of the caucus. So.
All right. John Morton, where are you? Raise your hand. Did he raise his hand? He can't see. Well, you can see why he may be a little leery. His affiliation is "Don't worry about it, Dr. Green." This is the first time that has ever happened. However, excellent penmanship. Good question. What are the solutions? Oh, you could take an extra minute. What are the solutions to the problems plaguing the VA hospital system? Are you optimistic that Washington can fix the VA? Time of the gentleman will expire at 10.
I'll try to give a succinct answer on that. I served on the Veterans Committee for 6 years in the House. And to give you a little bit of a background, when I first got to the House, in the congressional district I represented, we had one small storefront office. These are approximates. One doctor, and wait time was about 8 months to get in. We now have an office in the southern part of the district, in the old congressional district, an office in the Elkhart area. The South Bend has expanded from about 2,000 feet, then went to 7,000 feet. Now it's at 18,000 square feet, and we're going to be going to 65,000 square feet because of the need that we have. We have an IT system that's from the 80s. Think of that, the 1980s. We asked the VA for a list of every veteran in Indiana because we wanted to be able to contact them, let them know, here's what's going on VA, here's what's going on with the hospitals and this and that. And they said, you can get the list in 2 different forms. And we said, well, just send us a Microsoft Excel spreadsheet or a spreadsheet type thing. We can work with that. And they said, well, there's over 500,000 veterans in the state. They said, well, we can give you a paper copy of the name of every veteran. And, that's 500,000 names on paper. And we said, well, just send us a spreadsheet. They said, well, we can't do that. We can give you 500,000 names on paper, or we can give you a computer list, but there's no rhyme nor reason. It's just 500,000 names. It's not alphabetical. It's not where they're from. It's not their town. It's not how old they are. That's well, we said, well, what about a spreadsheet? They said, we don't have that. So we're dealing with that challenge on the medical side because that is the wait time system that we have. The IT for getting wait times is from about the 80s. And our wait time is 14 days. And what we've done, we just passed a bill in the Senate that I think the House is going to pass maybe this week, we hope, that says if you have not been able to get to see a doctor within 14 days, you can go to your private doctor and the VA will pick up the cost. So that takes care of that problem. But we have systemic problems all the way through. The care itself is terrific. It's really, really good. And the veterans love the VA in regards to the care. It's these issues around the edges. And the other thing I'll say very quickly is this. We're at the beginning of a 10-year, at least a 10-year increase because of the young men and women coming home from Afghanistan and Iraq. And they have challenges that we've never seen before. Or I shouldn't say we've never seen before. They've been out there. We've not dealt with them very well over the years. Where they've done 3, 4, 5 tours. And so they're more comfortable in Afghanistan than they are back home with their family. We see that all the time, where some of these young men and women were coming back, they'd be with their family a month or two and say, I want to go back. And so I just can't, I don't fit in here anymore. I have no idea when we have this going on how we're all worried about the Kardashians. You know, they come up and they're like, you know, what the hell is this place I've landed in? And these are the challenges our vets face. I was just able to get in with my partner, Roger Wicker from Mississippi, a Republican, completely bipartisan, a big section in the defense bill to try to reduce military suicides. In 2013, we lost 118 men and women in combat, and we lost 470 to suicide, 4 times more. And this year, we're seeing a spike in the Air Force, and we're seeing a spike in special operations. And so we're trying to put everything we have into this, and we're at the beginning. This is going to go on for, I mean, we need to fix the problems now, but the crying need is going to go through the roof over the next 10 years.
The last question, and probably the most important we've had to ask from Joyce Saxon, a member of the City Club Board. Will the state of Indiana ever, you know this is a setup, right, ever change to having one time zone throughout the entire state instead of being split half Chicago time and the other half Eastern time? Take as long as you need to answer that question, sir.
Well, what time is it? I'll leave this one for Mayor Freeman Wilson to solve. No, look, I represented a district where, you know, we were all good with, we had all figured out the time zones some years ago. Everybody, it was Chicago time and New York time. It wasn't Eastern time and Central time. It was Chicago time and New York time. And everybody had figured it out. And God love him, we elected a new governor who decided to fix a problem that nobody knew we had a problem. And he said, this will be great for commerce. And everybody's going, well, what time is it? We don't know what time it is. So it got so crazy. This is God's honest truth. I represented a county. It was a farming county. And our counties are traditionally about 20 miles long, high, and 20 miles wide. And this county, the eastern part of the county, was on New York time. This is at the same time. And the western part of the county was on Chicago time. So in one county, you had 2 different time zones. And so the first parade I went to, and I pride myself on being on time. So they had 2 parades that summer. And I go to all of, we used to do 40 a year at that time. And so the first parade, I was half an hour late for the parade because I had the wrong time zone. And so I caught up with it about the Riverside Bridge is where I caught up. So the second parade, I said everything. I got there, I was an hour and a half early for the second parade. And that is what we deal with all the time. But the best part is, this is Pulaski County. It's a beautiful place. The county library had 2 clocks on the wall. And the one clock said Winnemac, the other clock said Francisville. And, you know, it's not like Chicago and Detroit, if you know what I mean. And so that is a challenge that we have not, we were all very, very happy. We solved the problem that didn't exist. And now nobody has any idea what time it is in any part of the state. So,
before we conclude, hold it. Was that the guy, was that Governor Daniels? Please say yes, because I have a great line if it is.
His initials were MD, yes.
Well, now he's at the place he should be. He's the president of a university. How about a big round of applause for our, we got party here.